before being alone. He doesn't suddenly imagine and he's alone. And yes? Naam? Lust. Okay. Looking. Excellent. Sisters? Naam? Okay. All these things are things that lead to zina. So now realistically in Islam, when Allah prohibits something, He prohibits things that lead to it. He doesn't tell you, well, go ahead, get right to the doorstep, but stop there. It will block the road that will take you to that doorstep. This is how it works. Kind of like the example with alcohol, so people understand. So Allah has made consuming alcohol and getting drunk haram, right? So then He made things that lead to you getting drunk haram, such as selling it. Selling the alcohol is forbidden. Buying the alcohol is forbidden. Physically carrying the alcohol is forbidden. Sitting down with people who drink it's forbidden. So all these things lead to you getting drunk. They've become haram. It makes it more logical now. Compare that to in Christianity where you're allowed to drink but not to get drunk. So how many people say, they're drinking, they're like, oh, I think I'm about to get drunk. Let me desist. You know what really happens? The reality, alcohol is a substance that alters your judgment. So how on earth are you supposed to drink something that alters your judgment and then suddenly make a judgment that you've had enough? It doesn't work like that. So then the same thing with fornication. You're not supposed to fornicate. So then everything that will lead to that has been made prohibited. So you look at things that will eventually lead to fornication. It begins with the look. You have to obviously see the person first. So it begins with the look, the smile, the talk, the being alone, the touch, the zina. You don't just get into the zina. There are things that go before that. And like I said, our main goal here is not just to talk about preventing zina, but we're talking about the steps that will lead to it, and I want to focus on those. The two main culprits then would be the intermingling that I want to talk about. Intermingling and the gaze, the looking at women, and intermingling. So when it comes to intermingling, for some reason people have used it to say, well, this is a type of extremism. You go to an event, the men and women are sitting together, you say, let's have the men on one side, the women on one side. Someone's, that's a little extreme. Why are you being extreme? We're here at an Islamic event, and the hearts are pure, and the intentions are good, and all that stuff. So now let's understand something very important here about what is extreme and what is not. Within any realm, within any ideology, within any religion, there are typically two extremes. There's one extreme end, and there's the other extreme end. Within Islam and your behavior, there can be one extreme end and another extreme end. So if I were to ask you, who is the middle, what would you say? Jazakallah khair. The Prophet ﷺ is the middle. No one will dare say he was in this extreme end or the other extreme end. He was moderate, he was in the middle. Sahih? So now we look at what the Prophet ﷺ did. If what we're doing is less than what he did, that means we're moving to this extreme. And if what we're doing is more than what he did, we're moving to the other extreme. It's that simple, you see. Because now people use extremism for everything. Like we had a brother, a friend of ours, he used to work as a bouncer for 3 years in front of a nightclub. A bouncer. This is before he became practicing. So he stays until 3 a.m. in front of this nightclub, and he's supposed to, so people come with knives, with switchblades, with guns, and that's his job for 3 years. And his parents never said, this is that other extreme end. So then he started to become practicing, and he would stay with us at our Islamic center. Sometimes we'd have a late kebab dinner until he'd go home by midnight. His parents now were like, we're worried for you, akhi, you're staying until midnight with these people. They were never worried when he used to be a bouncer and come home 3 a.m. But now they're worried because this type of extremism, which they think is extremism, but the other life, they didn't look at it as extremism. There are two families, one is practicing, the other is getting drunk. They don't say, well, this one is extreme. They warn the one who's practicing, don't become extreme. So this is something that we have that's incorrect. With extremism, we look at the middle, the Prophet ﷺ. If we're doing less than him, you're going to that extreme end. If you're doing more than what he used to do, you're doing extra things and making it difficult, you're going towards the other extreme end. So it comes to intermingling. Every time you tell people separate the men and the women, you're being extreme. What's going to happen, yani? And most sins, they start off innocent. And most sins, they start off with good intention. Just like we said with the people who give da'wah, they start off giving da'wah, something good. And then emotions and feelings creep into it, and then it becomes sour. You have probably heard of the story of the past nations. A man, he was a abid and a salih. He was a righteous man and a worshipper of Allah. And then there were three brothers who wanted to go on a journey. So they thought, and they had a sister. They thought the best place was to leave their sister with this man, who is a worshipper and known for his righteousness. So they asked him, and he said, I can't leave her with me. So they built her a place next to him, a shelter, and she would stay in that room, never leaving. So they left on their journey, and they went out for over a year. So in the beginning, the shaitan came to him, and he tells him something that's possibly correct. He said, haram, the lady's alone, and she may feel sick, and she has no one to feed her. So the man, every time he cooked for himself, he started to cook a little bit more. Now we're talking about something, good intention so far. He'd cook a little bit more, and he would bring the food and leave it on her doorstep, knock the door, and leave. He doesn't want now to engage in conversation or anything. Just knock the door, he would leave. So he would do that for a while. Then the shaitan came to him again, and he said, why don't you wait until she takes the food, so that no strange person sees her taking the food. They might become interested in her, or they might talk to her. So then he would stay until she would take the food. So he would say something to her, and so on and so forth. So what happens then? The barriers started to break. And this is something that happens a lot. In MSAs, it happens in the Muslim workplace. It happens even within, like you find in the committees within the masjid. First, like I said, there's a great distance between the man and the woman. And then after a while, it becomes, they're giggling and joking and this and that. Because the barriers eventually break. So then he said, maybe she's, lonely and homesick. So he would start to engage in chit-chat, small talk. And after a while, the small talk became where he would go inside and he would eat. And as you know the story, in the end, he fell into zina with this person. And she became pregnant. And she even gave birth. So then he became afraid that he will be discovered. And he's known as the righteous man and the worshipper of Allah. So he killed both of them and he buried them. And after about a year and a half or so, the brothers returned, and he told them, Wallahi, your sister, she fell ill and she died, and this was the qadr of Allah Azza wa Jal, and she was buried and so on. So then they believed him because he was a righteous man, and they went away. And the shaitan kept coming to them in their dreams and kept telling them that this man killed her and he buried her in a certain place. So they went and they dug up that place and they found her buried with an infant and a child. So they knew. And they went to the sultan, the man in charge, and he was tried and he was now tied, awaiting his punishment. So while he was awaiting his punishment, the shaitan came to him in the form of a human, and he said, do you know me? The man said, I don't know you. He said, I'm the one who tricked you into this from the beginning. Because see, shaitan, he doesn't come to you and say, why don't you kill this person? Or why don't you perform zina? He starts with something simple. No one would fall for it if he comes and says, why don't you kill the person? So why don't you go insult him like he insulted you the other day? Or now he's insulting you too much, why don't you hit him back? Or eventually it leads to that. So he comes to you with something small first. So here, the shaitan said, I'm the one who started all this for you. And if you want out, there's one way I'll show you can come out of all this mess. And that you prostrate to me, you make one sajda to me. And this man who was a righteous man and a worshipper of Allah Azza wa Jal, he wanted to be freed from this embarrassing situation. So he made the sujood for the shaitan. And when he did that, the shaitan ran away saying, Inni akhafu Allah Rabbal Alameen. I am afraid of Allah, Lord of the worlds. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this in the Quran, كَمَثِلِ الشَّيْطَانِ إِذْ قَالَ لِلْإِنسَانِ اكْفُرْ فَلَمَّا كَفَرْ قَالَ إِنِّي بَرِيءٌ مِنْكَ إِنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهَ رَبَّ الْعَالَمِينَ. That the example of the shaitan, when he told to the man, he said to the man, ikfur, this, become a kafir. فَلَمَّا كَفَرْ, when he became a kafir, he said, I am innocent from what you do. I am afraid of Allah. I fear Allah, the Lord of the worlds. So this is how the shaitan slowly brings things, and this is how when the barriers break, it starts off with something simple, something innocent, and then it eventually leads to something that is haram. So what we want to say is that it is unnatural and unrealistic to assume that that nothing will happen between men and women. Because Allah Azza wa Jal has put a natural tension between men and women. So to say that we can be friends and it can be an innocent relationship, it's really unrealistic. The Prophet ﷺ told us in Bukhari, I'm not leaving behind any fitna, meaning any temptation, more harmful to men than women. So no temptation is stronger for the man than a woman. So how can you have a hadith like this that tells you there's nothing, no stronger temptation, and then you say, well, we can be friends and nothing will happen? It's unrealistic to expect that. And one Muslim man came to me one time, he said, I have